So here's a thought. What if the most natural, unconscious thing you do, maybe 25,000 times a day, is actually making you sick? Like, what if the actual key to your health, your mood, even how long you live, has been right under your nose this whole time, and we've all just, well, forgotten how to use it properly?
That definitely grabs your attention, doesn't it? But today we're really diving deep into the profound science of breathing. It's often so overlooked.
Right.
We're going to look at how fundamentally changing the way you breathe can actually transform your physical and mental well-being. We're drawing insights from this really groundbreaking book.
And it's not just about getting air in, is it?
Well,
Sounds like much more.
Exactly. It's more like reclaiming a lost art, a lost science that modern life has kind of stripped away from us in many ways.
A lost art. I like that. And, this kind of exploration is really part of our commitment here to inspiring reflection, rational thought. It's often fueled by the AI book analysis we feature over on our YouTube channel, Mindful Moments. So, yeah, get ready, because I think everything you thought you knew about breathing might be about to get challenged.
Definitely.
Okay, so let's unpack this. The author of the book, James Nestor. He didn't exactly start out as some kind of breathing expert, did he?
No, not at all.
His journey starts with, a really relatable struggle. Job stress. His house was literally falling apart. He had chronic pneumonia year after year, constant wheezing, just feeling completely stuck.
Yeah, sounds rough.
And his doctor, almost as an afterthought, apparently, suggested a breathing class. He talks about being pretty skeptical at first, especially with things like Sudarshan Kriya.
It's a specific yogic breathing technique.
Right. You went, tried it, felt nothing. No calm, no release. So what was the medical view back then? Was recommending a breathing class common, or was this totally out there?
Well, it's interesting because his personal experience really mirrors the broader scientific view at the time, or maybe the lack of a view in Western medicine. For a long, long time, the main idea was just breathing technique. Doesn't really matter. Just get air in, the body handles it. Simple as that.
Just automatic.
Yeah, automatic. But at the same time, some researchers were, kind of quietly, showing that lots of modern issues, things like asthma, anxiety, ADHD, even psoriasis, could actually be lessened or reversed just by changing how we breathe.
Really? Psoriasis too?
Apparently so. This work started to, really challenge those long-held beliefs. It showed that how we breathe genuinely affects our body weight, our lung function, immune response, even our longevity. It's fundamental.
Wow. And one thing I found totally fascinating, maybe a little unsettling, was this concept the book brings up from Harvard biologist Daniel Lieberman, dysevolution.
Ah, yes, dysevolution.
It kind of flips our whole idea of progress on its head, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Can you break down what that means, like in terms of human development and breathing?
Yeah, it's a really crucial concept. Dysevolution basically suggests that evolution isn't always about getting better, it's just change. And sometimes that change has, unintended negative consequences.
Okay.
So our ancestors developed amazing things, processing food with fire, growing these huge brains, complex speech, but these very adaptations kind of accidentally obstructed our mouths and throats.
Huh. How so?
Well, changes in jaw structure, the position of the larynx, things shifted. And over the last, say, 1.5 million years, these physical changes just made breathing harder. So all those things many of us think are normal, stuffy noses, snoring, allergies.
Yeah, I know plenty of people with those.
Right. They're not really normal. They might be direct results of this evolutionary trade-off, this dysevolution.
That's striking. It really makes you rethink things we just... But okay, beyond the history, what's the sort of immediate daily impact of this dysevolutionary blunder that people might be dealing with without even knowing it?
Well, it directly leads into how we often default to mouth breathing, especially when our noses feel blocked. And speaking of physical changes in the nose, for the longest time, Western medicine basically treated the nose like, an optional extra for breathing.
Like, use it if you want, but the mouth works too.
Pretty much. Breathe out of it if you can, but hey, no big deal if not, that's what the mouth is for. Which is just incredibly negligent when you understand how intricate the nose actually is. The author, Nestor, he actually did this personal experiment at Stanford. They threaded a tiny camera, an endoscope up his nose, he described seeing this incredibly complex internal world,
Right.
this whole landscape where trillions and trillions of molecules travel 18 times a minute, 25,000 times a day. It's a super active, vital pathway.
And he needed that perspective because didn't he actually tape his mouth shut for 10 days to force mouth breathing? We should probably touch on that later.
Yes, he did. A pretty extreme experiment.
But before that, the book talks about research by Dr. Mariana Evans and Dr. Kevin Boyd. They looked at skulls, ancient ones and modern ones. And they found something amazing, right?
Absolutely astonishing. Ancient human skulls had nasal apertures, those openings connecting to the nasal passages that were twice as large as ours today.
Twice as large.
Yeah, which strongly suggests they just breathed better, easier. Our modern faces, partly because of softer diets, have changed so much. Smaller mouths, recessed facial bones.
And the book mentions a tenfold increase in crooked teeth and jaws since the Industrial Revolution.
Exactly. So these aren't just minor shifts or cosmetic things. This disevolution fundamentally explains why so many of us are less efficient breathers, why things like snoring or allergies are actually symptoms of this deeper structural change. It really sets the stage for why relearning how to breathe, especially through the nose, is so critical now.
That makes sense. It connects the history to our current problems.
And this facial change is huge. The book tells this really dramatic before and after story of a 7-year-old girl, Gigi.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
She had chronic snoring, sinusitis, asthma, allergies, this kind of slack-jawed look, after just 2 years of learning proper nasal breathing.
Only 2 years.
Yeah, her face literally changed shape, her teeth straightened, and all those chronic health issues just disappeared.
That's incredible just from changing how she breathed.
Primarily, yes. And they saw similar things in adults, too. Improvements in high blood pressure, depression, headaches, all linked back to retraining breathing.
So there's real science backing this nasal breathing thing.
Oh, absolutely. It's incredibly compelling. Nasal breathing boosts nitric oxide levels 6-fold.
Nitric oxide, okay. Why is that important?
Well, it helps us absorb about 18% more oxygen compared to mouth breathing. It's crucial for oxygen uptake.
18% more oxygen just by using your nose.
Exactly. And they've seen it help with ADHD in kids. There's a case of a 5-year-old whose ADHD, linked to sleep breathing issues, vanished after using mouth tape at night. Plus, it drastically cuts down on snoring and sleep apnea.
The book even shares that story about George Catlin, the artist back in the 1800s. Doctors thought his respiratory problems would kill him.
Right, and he basically cured himself by forcing himself to breathe through his nose, even taping his mouth shut at night. He called mouth breathing an insidious enemy. That kind of transformation is a real theme here.
It definitely seems to be.
It is. And something that's often missed, which Carl Stuff, they called him Dr. Breath, discovered, is that real lung power and longevity isn't just about the inhale, it's about the exhale, a full exhalation.
Dr. Breath, okay. So focusing on breathing out seems a bit backward.
I know, right? Stuff was originally a choir and singing teacher. He noticed his students had weak voices because their exhales were weak, shallow. He later worked with emphysema patients whose diaphragms were basically shot. He taught them how to gently reawaken those muscles, coaxing them to let out more air, fully empty their lungs, so paradoxically, more fresh air could get in.
Okay, that makes more sense when you put it like that. Emptying fully to allow a fuller fill. And it connects to the mechanics, right? Like the diaphragm and the thoracic pump driving circulation.
Precisely. The diaphragm contracts on the inhale, pulling air in and helping draw blood towards the heart. On the exhale, it relaxes, pushing air out and helping push blood away from the heart. This whole pump mechanism happens, 50,000 times a day?
10,000 times? Wow.
It's constant. And what's amazing is how this simple mechanical process ties directly into big things like how long we live and even athletic performance.
How so? Is there evidence for that?
Absolutely. Studies show a clear link. Larger lung capacity correlates directly with longer lifespans. But here's the encouraging part. Lungs are malleable. You can strengthen them at any age.
It's not too late.
Not at all. The book shares the story of Katharina Schroth. She had severe scoliosis herself, a really curved spine. She developed exercises to expand her lungs and improve her posture and breathing, and not only overcame it, but lived to 91, teaching others.
Wow. She helped people who couldn't even walk.
Yeah, patients severely hunched over. Incredible results. And Stuff, Dr. Breath, he also worked with elite athletes like the Yale track team.
Top athletes. You'd think they breathe perfectly.
You would. But he found many suffered from respiratory weaknesses because they were breathing inefficiently shallow, high up in the chest. Even they benefited massively from learning to breathe deeper, using the diaphragm, focusing on that full exhale.
Okay, this next idea really messed with my head. Anders Olsen, someone the author was initially skeptical of, apparently champions this idea. Carbon dioxide is more important than oxygen.
Right. Sounds completely wrong.
Yeah. CO2 is the waste product, isn't it?
Yeah.
How could it be more important? What's the science there, like the Bohr effect?
Exactly. The Bohr effect is key. And it's not just about getting oxygen into cells. CO2 also has this really profound dilating effect on blood vessels, which is crucial for blood flow everywhere.
Okay, dilating blood vessels.
Yeah, widening them. So the Bohr effect essentially says that CO2 helps oxygen detach from the hemoglobin in your red blood cells and actually get into the tissues and cells that are hungry for it. Without enough CO2, oxygen kind of stays stuck to the hemoglobin.
So oxygen's there, but it can't get delivered properly without CO2?
Pretty much. CO2 is like the key that unlocks the oxygen delivery. And here's a weird side fact tied to CO2. Mm-hmm. We actually lose weight through breathing it out. Carbon dioxide has mass.
Huh. Never thought of that.
But what's really critical is understanding the downside of overbreathing. That common idea that more oxygen is always better. Just breathe deeper, faster. It's often wrong.
How so?
Well, overbreathing, like hyperventilating, actually purges too much CO2 from your body. And paradoxically, this can reduce blood flow because vessels constrict, lead to headaches, cramps, even a feeling of oxygen deficiency or relative suffocation because the oxygen you do have isn't getting delivered effectively.
So you feel breathless because you're breathing too much?
In a way, yes. Think about those weird experiments Yandel Henderson did with dogs too much oxygen, too little CO2, their organs failed. Or those oxygen bars, they might boost blood oxygen slightly, but without enough CO2, it doesn't help your tissues much.
Okay, so the big takeaway is breathe less, live more.
Yeah.
That seems to be the idea. Optimum breathing isn't faster or deeper, but fewer inhales and exhales in a smaller volume.
Exactly. The author's own experiment was fascinating. He tried breathing extremely slowly, just 6 breaths per minute, and his oxygen levels actually increased.
That's wild. And it connects directly to Konstantin Buteko's work, right?
Mm-hmm. But Tycho suffered from terrible hypertension himself. He became convinced that many chronic diseases stemmed from breathing too much, losing too much CO2.
So he developed methods focused on breathing less.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
Increasing CO2 tolerance by breathing less, more shallowly, often through the nose. He used it to treat asthma, migraines, hypertension. It was controversial at first, naturally.
I bet.
But his techniques eventually gained recognition, even from groups like the Global Initiative for Asthma.
And this even applies in sports. Breathing less.
It does. It's called hypoventilation training. Basically, breathing less while exercising, creating a bit of air hunger. It trains the body to do more with less oxygen, become more efficient.
Like who? Any examples?
Well, the famous Olympic runner Emil Zatopek supposedly pioneered this. And the book mentions the U.S. men's swimming team under coach James Councilman. They used breath-holding techniques extensively in training before the Montreal Olympics. They won 13 gold medals. The idea was to make the body better at using the oxygen it had. Less really can be more.
Okay, so breathing isn't just mechanical, it's chemical. It affects our structure.
Yeah.
What about our minds, our stress levels? The book talks about it being like a control panel for our nervous system.
Absolutely. It's a direct line to our autonomic nervous system, the system running all the involuntary stuff like heart rate, digestion. It has those 2 main branches, parasympathetic.
That's the rest and digest, right? Calm down mode.
Exactly. And the sympathetic.
Fight or flight, stress mode.
Right. And how we breathe fast and shallow versus slow and deep directly shifts the balance between those two. We can consciously control this usually unconscious system through breath.
So we can actually choose to calm ourselves down just by breathing differently.
Yes. But what's also really interesting is using intentional stress to gain more control, like techniques such as Tumo or inner fire meditation.
Practiced by Tibetan Buddhists.
Oh.
And Wim Hof made it famous.
That's the one. It involves intentional, heavy, rapid breathing, often combined with cold exposure. You basically force the body into high stress, then into deep relaxation.
Why would you do that?
It's like training. You make the body more adaptable, more resilient to stress, and there's evidence it can help regulate the immune system, like reducing inflammation in conditions like psoriatic arthritis. It's about building resilience through controlled challenges.
And this connects to anxiety too, right? The book suggests panic attacks might not be purely psychological.
Yeah, this is huge. It suggests a physical root involving the body's chemoreceptors, the sensors that monitor CO2 levels. If they're overly sensitive, even small changes in CO2 can trigger panic.
So it's a physical sensitivity causing a psychological reaction.
That's the idea. Researchers like Dr. Joseph Wolpe and Dr. Donald Klein actually rediscovered CO2 therapy for anxiety. By carefully exposing people to higher CO2, they could sort of recalibrate or desensitize these chemoreceptors, effectively curing panic attacks in many cases.
Wow. And that means the standard advice for a panic attack, take a deep breath, is actually wrong.
Often, yes. Taking big gulps of air can lower CO2 even more, making it worse. The book suggests holding your breath for a few seconds might be far more effective in that moment to allow CO2 to build slightly.
That's completely counterintuitive to what most people hear.
It is, and it highlights the link between our fear center, the amygdala, and our breathing centers. They're constantly talking to each other.
It really does reframe things, pointing to these basic biological functions we've maybe overlooked.
Exactly. Simple but profound changes.
So we've hit internal systems, the nervous system. Let's loop back quickly to that disevolution idea in our faces again. Specifically, how modern life, especially diet, has reshaped our mouths and airways.
Right, because it all connects. The book really hammers home how much our faces have changed, especially since the industrial age. Soft, processed foods mean less chewing.
Less work for the jaw.
Exactly. And that lack of chewing stress leads to smaller, weaker jaws, more recessed mouths, and consequently, smaller airways. Remember Dr. Houghton's observation? Savages have excellent teeth, and civilized men have terrible teeth.
Yeah, linking diet, teeth, and by extension, breathing. And that tenfold increase in crooked teeth since industrialization.
It's not just about straight teeth. It's a sign of underlying structural changes impacting the airway. But there are modern fixes. Dr. John Mew, Dr. Theodore Belford, they pioneered using oral expansion devices.
Like braces?
Sort of, but different. Things like the monoblock or homeoblock. Think of them less like forcing teeth straight and more like gently encouraging the jaws and palate to grow wider, more forward over time. They actually reshape the facial structure to open the airway.
How do they do that?
They basically simulate that missing chewing stress our ancestors got from tough foods. This stimulation helps release stem cells, promoting bone growth and development in the face and jaw. It's about guiding growth back towards a more natural, functional state.
But you don't necessarily need a fancy, expensive device.
Yeah.
Right. The book mentions simpler things.
Yeah, absolutely. Dr. Mariana Evans apparently recommends just chewing really hard gum, like Turkish Faline gum, for a couple hours a day. That alone can provide some of that needed stress to stimulate bone and potentially expand the airway.
Just chewing gum. Interesting.
And breastfeeding is highlighted too. The mechanics of breastfeeding provide crucial exercise for an infant's oral and facial development, setting them up for better breathing later.
It all seems to connect back to these fundamental, almost primal activities.
It really does. And these insights beautifully bridge ancient wisdom with modern science. Think about the yogic concept of prana or chi, that vital life energy. Well, you can connect that to the work of Nobel laureate Albert Szent-Györgyi on cellular respiration. He basically theorized that life gets energy from air through electron excitability. The more efficiently cells use oxygen, the more, well, animated and healthy they are at a fundamental, almost subatomic level.
So oxygen isn't just fuel, it's like electrical charge for life.
That's one way to think about it. It suggests the ancients weren't just being mystical about life force. They were tapping into observable biological truths about energy and vitality derived from breath.
And this ties into mastering breathing techniques, right? It's not about quick hacks. The author mentions his experience with Master DeRose, who stressed patients.
Exactly. DeRose emphasized flexibility in taking years to subtly master pranayama. Those jarring initial experiences, like Nestor's first try with Sudarshan Kriya, where he felt overwhelmed or nothing at all, that's often a sign of trying to hack or force something that requires gradual, patient practice.
It's a journey, not a shortcut.
Precisely. And that underscores the book's main argument, really. Modern medicine is amazing for emergencies, acute problems, but for these nagging, chronic, systemic issues, asthma, anxiety, headaches, chronic stress, it often falls short.
Yeah, you often just get medication to manage symptoms.
Right. And the book makes a compelling case that breathing is the massive missing piece. It's fundamental, it's free, it's accessible to everyone, and it offers real solutions for so many modern health problems that doctors often aren't equipped to address at the root cause level in a typical appointment.
What a powerful idea. Breathing, something we do constantly without thinking, is maybe the most profound tool we have for our health, our longevity, even our emotional state. The book really frames it as this lost art we can all get back.
And the amazing thing is, you listening now have the insights to start tapping into that power, to live a healthier, more balanced life. Simple things we talked about, just focusing on breathing through your nose whenever possible, paying attention to fully exhaling. These are practical steps you can try, starting today.
Definitely. We really encourage you to continue exploring this.
Yeah.
If you found this deep dive fascinating, please subscribe to our show for more explorations like this one.
And maybe share this with friends or family. Anyone you know who deals with stress, sleep issues, allergies, these insights could really help.
Absolutely. And if you want to go even deeper, consider getting the book. We'll put a link in the show notes. It's packed with even more detail and stories.
And as always, keep thinking critically about the world around you, yes, but also about the incredible, often untapped potential within your own body. You likely have more control over your well-being than you realize.